Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. Summer Newman may eventually reach her breaking point with Phyllis Summers, and this time, the fallout could be endless, ruinous, and hugely unrecoverable, because the rearmost Newman attack isn't just another reckless scheme or impulsive power snare. It strikes at the veritably core of Summers' identity, her marriage, her career, and her place within the Newman dynasty, forcing her to ask a brutal question she's been avoiding for times: is her mama worth the constant chaos, demotion, and emotional collateral damage? For Phyllis, the situation feels strangely familiar and dangerously comfortable, because she's convinced she's weathered worse storms with her children ahead and survived them all. After all, Summer and Daniel Romalotti Jr. forgave her for the unbelievable, faking her own death, allowing her children to suffer her, and manipulating everyone who loved her. So in Phyllis's mind, a ruthless commercial preemption is virtually minor by comparison, just another messy chapter in a life defined by bold moves and unapologetic ambition. Yet what Phyllis fails to grasp is that this time, the treason isn't abstract or distant, it's deeply particular, entangling Summer's fidelity to her mama with her constancy to the Newmans, her hubby Kyle Abbott's family heritage through Jabot, and the fragile trust she's fought so hard to rebuild within Victor Newman's conglomerate. Kane Ashby, still, sees the peril with intimidating clarity, because he's lived this exact agony before: the intoxicating high of palm, the exhilaration of subjection, the belief that success will eventually fill the emptiness outside, only to wake up and realize that the cost was far lesser than the price, measured not in misplaced bones, but in disassociated connections, estranged children, and a life visited by remorse, which is why Kane watches Phyllis's confidence with apprehension rather than admiration, advising her that the Newman preemption isn't just a business initiative but a family landmine that could explode in ways she can't control. Phyllis, riding the adrenaline of eventually standing toe-to-toe with Victor Newman and winning, skirmishes off Kane's enterprises, averring that Summer will understand, that her son knows who Victor really is, that she'll see this as lyrical justice rather than treason, especially since Victor himself was preparing to strike Jabot, a move that would have directly risked Marchetti, the veritably company Summer has poured her heart and soul into, and in Phyllis's eyes, that makes her conduct not only justified but necessary. Yet Summer doesn't see the world through her mama's lens of revenge and moral inflexibility. She sees a pattern: Phyllis choosing herself, her grievances, and her hunger for confirmation over the emotional safety of her children over and over again. And this rearmost trick may be the moment when remission eventually runs out. Phyllis will really comb up the long list of Victor's sins to defend herself, reminding Summer of the innumerous times he's crossed insupportable lines, including the horrifying violation of placing a felonious ringer, Marco Anicelli, in her bed while she was still married to Jack Abbott. A advised act of atrocity that left scars Phyllis insists will no way completely heal, and she'll point to Victor's more recent treason, refusing to recognize his deal with her, as proof that air was always going to come for him, that this preemption is simply fate balancing the scales. But while Phyllis frames her conduct as righteous retaliation, Summer jests them as yet another case of her mama dragging her into a war she no way asked to fight, forcing her to defend the unpardonable at family feasts, in boardrooms, and within her marriage. Nick Newman's influence only intensifies the pressure, as he urges Summer to come home now that Noah Newman is back in city, subtly reminding her where her roots truly lie and offering her a safe haven down from Phyllis's raising chaos. And as the verity about the preemption comes into sharper focus, Summer's nausea grows, morphing into a nipping resoluteness that shocks indeed those closest to her, because this time, she isn't threatening consequences or demanding justifications. She's considering in claims so severe it would permanently review their relationship back down and make this right, or lose me ever. The battle could unfold in numerous ways: a gash-filled phone call creaking with fury and heartache, or a face-to-face showdown where decades of resentment eventually unmask out. But no matter the setting, the communication will be unmistakable, as Summer makes it clear that she's done cleaning up her mama's messes, done excusing jest that humiliates her and endangers everything she's erected, and done immolating her own peace for Phyllis's endless games. Kane, meanwhile, continues to press Phyllis with questions she refuses to answer, actually asking her to truly consider what palm looks like if it means standing alone at the top, alienated from her children and stripped of the love she claims to value. Because Kane recognizes the warning signs in her preoccupation, the way her eyes light up when she talks about eventually earning the Newmans' attention, the pride in her voice when she admits she's no way felt better than she does now, having seized the prize that escaped her for decades, and he knows that kind of confirmation is transitory, unable of replacing the bonds she's gambling down, after her explosive battle with Nick, which leaves her shaken despite her bravado. Phyllis confides in Kane that Nick indicted her of betraying everyone, a statement that lingers uncomfortably in the air as she acknowledges, maybe for the first time, that she could lose her family and musketeers over this, that Summer may be hugely repulsed by the verity and choose to walk down for good, yet indeed as mistrustfulness flickers, Phyllis clings to the belief that her son will eventually understand, that blood is thicker than boardroom battles, refusing to consider backing out of the deal. Indeed, when Kane directly asks if she's willing to immolate the adventure for her relationship with Summer, Kane's response is chillingly simple, drawing from his own painful experience, as he reminds her that his children want nothing to do with him presently, that ambition and pride bring him the veritably people he was fighting to give for, and when Phyllis tries to shut down the discussion, averring they keep their kiddies out of it, Kane refuses to let her categorize reality, advising her that Summer is formerly part of the equation whether she likes it or not, that Victor and Nick are laboriously turning her son against her, and that the question she must answer isn't whether she can master the Newmans but whether that palm is worth losing the love and respect of her child. Phyllis, true to form, doubles down, covenanting to see this through until the bitter end, declaring that the Newmans doen't scarify her and that their belief that they still have power over her only energies her determination, yet Kane's quiet, haunted expression suggests he knows exactly how this story ends, not with triumph but with insulation, as Phyllis stands atop her hard-won conglomerate only to realize that the applause she craved has been replaced by silence from the people who signified most, and as Summer elevation closer to ramifying their mama-son bond for good, the heartbreaking verity becomes insolvable to ignore. Phyllis may eventually win the war she's been fighting her entire life, but in doing so, she risks losing the one relationship she can no way replace, proving that in the ruthless world of Genoa City power plays, the most ruinous losses aren't measured in shares or pots, but in the quiet, unrecoverable moment when a son decides she's done with her mama's selfish games and walks down for good. Summer disowns Phyllis over Newman attack, done with mom's selfish games? Summer Newman may disown Phyllis Summers over the rearmost Newman attack. Will Summer decide she's done with her mama's selfish games? Phyllis feels confident that she can handle whatever counter-reaction she's going to admit from her kiddies, but Kane Ashby doesn't feel as certain. Kane has first-hand experience when it comes to pursuing big business dreams and losing his family in the process. That's why Kane wants to make sure Phyllis knows what she's getting herself into when it comes to this Newman preemption and the fallout it'll bring. Phyllis could push Daniel Romalotti Jr. and especially Summer too far with her rearmost capers. Summer and Daniel forgave Phyllis for faking her demise, so she supposedly got it in her head that they'll forgive her for just about anything. A company preemption isn't as bad as pretending to suffer a grim fate, so we can see why Phyllis would suppose she can smooth effects over then. Still, Phyllis constantly pulls numbers and leaves her kiddies dealing with the fermentation. This may be a case of Phyllis pushing Summer one time too numerous, particularly since this affects the entire Newman side of the family. Of course, Phyllis might point out that dear Grandpa Victor Newman was preparing to go after Jabot. Since Marchetti falls under the Jabot marquee, Phyllis might push Summer to see that Victor is no better than her. Likewise, Phyllis has every right to detest Victor until the end of time for his once conduct. Victor put a felonious ringer named Marco Anicelli in Phyllis's bed when she was still with Jack Abbott, so that was a major violation. More lately, Victor refused to follow through on his deal with Phyllis, so it's easy to see why she keeps playing up the idea of air coming for him. Nonetheless, Summer isn't going to have the same perspective and may choose to give Phyllis an claim. Still, Summer may covenant to disown her, if Phyllis doesn't back down and try to make this right. Summer might promise to ramify their mama-son connection and cut off all contact. This might be over the phone or indeed in person if Summer decides to defy Phyllis face-to-face at some point. Nick Newman has been prompting Summer to come home now that Noah Newman is back in city, so that's worth keeping in mind. Is Kane's twisted YNR scheme to educate Phyllis' assignment? Kane formerly knows what it's like to lose everything in his life. And he could be showing Phyllis that success and wealth is end everything. Kane questioned Phyllis about how she truly felt about acquiring Newman Enterprises. Her response was loud. She had no way felt better. Eventually, she secured the prize that always escaped her. For times, Phyllis no way got the Newmans' respect or attention. That ended now. Still, Kane might be tutoring Phyllis a sober assignment. It's not about what you gain, but what you lose in the process. After her heated battle with Nick, Kane is surprised that she's still in one piece. She sat in the corner, with a flustered look on her face. Phyllis told Kane that Nick told her that she's betrayed everyone. She could end up losing her family and musketeers. Summer will be shocked to learn the verity and want nothing to do with her. Kane wondered if Phyllis wondered the same thing. She argued that Summer would understand why she had to do what she did. Kane wanted to know if Phyllis was considering backing out of their deal. But Phyllis ain't giving up that fluently. Indeed, though Nick got to her head, she's not pulling out. She believed that her son would understand. Kane asked if her kiddies would understand the same way his kiddies do. His kiddies want nothing to do with him presently. Phyllis didn't want to talk about their kiddies. She wanted to keep them out of their exchanges. Kane advised Phyllis that Summer is part of the equation. Victor and Nick are trying to turn her against her mama. He wanted to know if this adventure was worth losing the love and respect of her children. The fate of Summer's claim does end explode all at formerly it simmers, stretches, and tightens like a line pulled too far, because Summer Newman is end impulsive the way her mama is, and when she considers cutting Phyllis out of her life, it's not a trouble born of wrathfulness but a decision forged through prostration, disappointment, and times of emotional whiplash that have eventually caught up with her. In the days following the disclosure of Phyllis's part in the Newman attack, Summer retreats inward, replaying every moment she ever defended her mama, every time she smoothed effects over with Kyle, with Victor, with Nick, telling herself that Phyllis was complicated but loving, reckless but pious, destructive but eventually well-meaning, and yet each memory now feels alloyed, because this wasn't just another scheme, it was a calculated move that risked Marchetti, undermined the Abbott Newman détente, and placed Summer exactly in the crosshairs of a commercial war she no way acceded to fight. Summer's phone fills with missed calls and unlettered dispatches from Phyllis, each one trickling with forced sanguinity and lost confidence, as if enough cheerful continuity will magically abolish the damage, but rather of comfort. Those dispatches enkindle a deeper fury, because they confirm what Summer has stressed all along. Phyllis still doesn't get it, still believes love is unconditional remission rather than earned trust. Meanwhile, Nick watches his son struggle and feels a familiar, helpless rage rise within him, torn between wanting to cover Summer from farther pain and wanting to shake Phyllis until she eventually understands the consequences of her conduct. And while he stops short of openly demanding Summer cut her mama off, his silence speaks volumes, buttressing the idea that distancing herself from Phyllis might be the healthiest choice she's ever made. Victor Newman, ever the strategist, senses the fracture widening and subtly applies pressure, framing Phyllis's treason not just as a particular vendetta but as a destabilizing force that threatens the Newman heritage, reminding Summer that fidelity is everything in their world and that Phyllis has proven, time and again, that her fidelity always bends toward herself. A narrative that resonates further than Summer wants to admit. Back at the center of the storm, Phyllis oscillates between defiance and despair, brushing off Kane Ashby's grim warnings one moment and twisting into fear the coming, convinced that if she can just explain herself the right way, if she can make Summer see Victor as the villain she's always known him to be, everything will fall back into place. Yet every attempt at defense only digs the hole deeper, because Summer doesn't want a lecture on Newman insincerity or a history assignment on Victor's sins. She wants responsibility, guilt, and evidence that her mama values her son further than the intoxicating rush of palm. Kane, watching this unravel with painful familiarity, grows decreasingly equivocal about his own part in Phyllis's downfall, because while part of him believes she needs to learn this assignment the hard way, another part recoils at the study of being complicit in a family's destruction, visited by recollections of his own children turning down from him, their disappointment sharper than any physical loss he ever suffered. In quiet moments, Kane presses Phyllis again, asking her to imagine a future where Summer doesn't call, DISOWNMENT visit, DISOWNMENT show up for leaves or mileposts, and for the first time, the image rattles her enough to crack her bravado, revealing flashes of raw fear beneath the fiery surface she's worn for decades. But fear alone isn't enough to stop her, because Phyllis has erected her entire identity on no way backing down, on refusing to be cornered or controlled, especially by the Newmans, and the study of retreating now feels like erasing everything she's fought for. Indeed, if the cost is unsupportable. As the pressure escalates, Summer eventually agrees to meet Phyllis face to face, not out of conciliation but choosing a neutral position that underscores the emotional distance between them, and when Phyllis arrives, armed with arguments and apologies, she's blindsided by the calm resoluteness in her son's eyes, a stillness far more intimidating than wrathfulness, because it signals that Summer has formally begun the process of letting go. Summer listens as Phyllis launches into her familiar narrative, Victor's atrocity, the Marco Anicelli agony, the broken pledges, the decades of being dismissed and undervalued but rather of sympathy. Summer responds with a ruinous clarity, telling her mama that none of that defense is dragging her into another war, that pain doesn't justify contributory damage, and that being wrong doesn't entitlement authorization to keep wronging others. When Phyllis insists she did it all for her family, for Summer's future, the words land like in personality, because Summer fires back that if that were true, Phyllis would have asked her first, would have considered her passions rather of assuming remission was guaranteed, and in that moment, the generational ocean between them yawns wide, exposing the abecedarian difference in how they define love. The discussion reaches its breaking point when Summer eventually voices the aloud. She's been scuffling with for days, admitting that she doesn't trust Phyllis presently, that every relationship in her life feels like it's constantly under trouble because of her mama's choices, and that she's tired of living in a perpetual state of damage control, and as gashes slip despite her countenance, Summer delivers the claim Phyllis has been dreading: step back from the Newman preemption and make amends, or accept that their relationship will be permanently altered. Conceivably disassociated entirely. Phyllis, stupefied and cornered, reacts artificially, lashing out in defense rather than surrender, criminating Victor and Nick of poisoning Summer against her, averring this is all part of a larger Newman manipulation, and with that, she seals her fate, because Summer's face hardens, her heart takes shaping into resoluteness as she declares she's done being criticized for choices she didn't make, done being used as emotional influence in her mama's endless feuds. The meeting ends without a clinch, without conciliation, without indeed a pledge to talk again, and as Summer walks down, Phyllis feels commodity she's avoided her entire life, the intimidating consummation that this time, she may not be suitable to fix it. News of the battle ripples through Genoa City, with Daniel floundering to reuse the possibility of losing his mama each over again, this time emotionally rather than physically, while Kyle grapples with the strain on his marriage, caught between supporting Summer's boundaries and navigating the fallout within the Abbott-Newman business geography. Victor, ever realistic, prepares contingency plans, anticipating that Summer's distancing from Phyllis could be abused to stabilize Newman Enterprises, while Nick focuses solely on being there for his son, still proud of her strength indeed as he mourns the family fracture he knows too well. Kane, witnessing the consequences of his cooperation with Phyllis unfold in real time, begins to question whether his part in this scheme has crossed from calculated threat into moral failure, because while he wanted to educate Phyllis' assignment about the cost of ambition, he didn't intend to watch a mama and son gash each other piecemeal, and yet he also recognizes that occasionally the harshest assignments are the only bones that stick. As Phyllis throws herself deeper into the preemption, using work as both guard and distraction, the palms ring concave, each triumph overshadowed by the silence from Summer, a silence that grows louder with every passing day, until indeed her defiance feels performative, a mask slipping under the weight of loneliness. In quieter moments, Phyllis renewals Summer's words, not the allegations but the prostration, the pain, the futurity, and for the first time, she wonders if Kane was right each on, if the true cost of this war isn't measured in adversaries defeated but in connections lost beyond form. The irony is cruel and unmistakable. Phyllis has eventually achieved the respect and power she craved, standing victorious over the Newmans who formerly dismissed her, yet the confirmation feels empty without her son's love, and as Genoa City braces for the coming phase of this high-stakes battle, one verity becomes decreasingly clear: whether Phyllis eventually wins or loses Newman Enterprises, She may have formerly lost the only prize that ever truly signified, and unless she's willing to defy her own patterns and choose modesty over pride, Summer's decision to disown her may not be a dramatic trouble but a endless, heartbreaking reality that reshapes their lives ever.